Oh, she tripping.
Good morning, everyone. How y'all feeling today? Don't fool me now. How y'all feeling today? Y'all feeling good? Well, I don't think y'all feel good enough. Let's see if we can feel better. How many of y'all know this song? Oh, we can't hear it. Let's see. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Y'all know that song? Oh, here we go. Everybody see what it said? They don't stop the 2 stopping song. Real change the world with this song. You hear me? It's gonna be stuck in your head all day long. This is good. Church life? What? I don't know how y'all wear shorts to church. Black people don't wear shorts to church. Y'all put their hands together. How many y'all happy today? All right, do y'all see the representation in this video? I saw different ethnicities. I saw different body shapes. I saw different sexual representations. I saw all kinds of different representations, and all these people had access to that. The reality is, when we talk about improving outcomes for our students in schools, communities, we want to give them access to having a full life. And so today, I am going to be talking about Equipped to Engage. Let's see if I can get to the next slide here. They put a good, nice little title on this whole thing. Equipped to Engage is a 2020 vision for working with schools, parents, community, and faith-based organizations. So the goal is for us to have 2020 vision, to have a clear idea of how we can help connect our students to access to great opportunities. So my name is Tabor. I'm the founder and president of Triple I Coaching. Stands for We Inform, Instruct, and Inspire People to Fulfill Their Purpose. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I have a degree from UT, which is why I'm wearing a pen. There's a scripture in the Bible says, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. Spent about $100,000 there, so my heart is there. Like, why do you root for UT? I'm like, man, when you drop all that money, spend 5 years, let my wife there, while I was at UT, I got a whole lot of investment. And I'm sorry, football team. But hey, it's a reality of the situation. I have a master's in ministry leadership from Migrant Seminary. I'm getting my doctorate in transformational leadership at Baki Graduate University. Certification in nonprofit management, life coaching, human behavior specialist, sexual risk avoidance, building family connections, grant writing. What that means is I like learning. That's all I said. I like to learn, and they give you pieces of paper for learning, so I take pieces of paper, make them all, and I do videos and people think I know what I'm talking about. That's all it is. My background is in the nonprofit sector. I worked as a mission advisor at UT, was a campus pastor, staff pastor at a large church, started a church, sold cars when I started a church, did a missions advisor, was a sex educator, worked for Apartment Life. Now I'm a business development with Big Austin while I'm running Triple I Coaching and serve on the One Star Service Commission Board that the governor appointed me to. We oversee all the AmeriCorps programming in the state. The Embrace Life Board on the Humanity team where I oversee our mental health workshops on first Saturdays. And I'm part of the African American Leadership Institute, which is like a leadership development program for African Americans in Austin that is amazing. So you can follow me on all of the socials out there. I do Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. I'm at 63 subscribers on YouTube. So for everybody in here subscribe, I can have youtube.Corey Tabor, you know what I'm saying? YouTube.com/Corey Tabor. Yeah, that would be nice. So, And then we got to get to, I think, 1,000 to monetize. So that's what I let my kids do. They don't monetize. And so these are some of the resources I've created to inform, instruct, and inspire people, books. I do comedy, I do a podcast, couple of podcasts, 2, 3 podcasts. Prioritize Your Purpose, I have copies of that here today. The generic copy, we're writing a student edition that'll be hopefully an admin and advisory classes in the fall. And then we're doing a faith edition that'll be out here in a couple of weeks as well. And the whole purpose of the book is basically to help people discover their purpose and then how do you prioritize your roles, relationships, time, and money to accomplish your purpose. So that's what I do. I got this gospel album I wrote in college. I wrote music for all of these books because music has a way of like bypassing the intellect to getting to the heart. And it's a lot of what I'm gonna talk about today is how do we create these wraparound components to supplement what we do with engaging and equipping students. The reason I'm here today is because my wife let me come. Maybe I've been married, it'll be 19 years in June, we'll be together 23 years in August. We started dating on June, August the 2nd, 1999 at 11:37 p.m. Central Standard Time. 7:41. And we got married on June 7th, 2003, 1 o'clock Central Standard Time, zip code 75093. Why do I remember these details? Because I'm an archivist. Anybody taking the Clifton Strengths, it used to be called the Strengths Finders assessment. It's one of those assessments that helps you see like what you're really strong in, and I like details and history, and so my wife would be like, how long have you been married? You know, I'm the guy that knows the details on when, where, and all that kind of stuff. These are our 2 kids, Anaya, who is 8. We found out we were pregnant with her on our 10th wedding anniversary. We were at the Cheesecake Factory. I was eating the chicken and biscuits and drinking raspberry lemonade. Anybody had raspberry lemonade at the Cheesecake Factory? Oh my God, it's so good. You can literally get a sugar high from this raspberry lemonade. And my wife says, look at your phone. I'm like, I'm not looking at my phone. Because at dinner, we don't look at our phones. You know, I mean, that's a thing we have in our relationship. She said, look at your phone. I'm like, I'm not looking at my phone. She said, no, seriously, look at your phone. I thought she started a fight so we could make up. Doesn't make no sense. And so, anyways, so eventually I looked at my phone and there's a picture of a positive pregnancy test. It said, happy 10th anniversary with 10 fingers and 10 toes. I said, we're pregnant? She said, no, I'm pregnant. So the terminology these days is we're pregnant. She said, I'm the one about to grow up. I'm pregnant. And so we had had a miscarriage a couple of years before. And so Anaya is a word that speaks to, it means that God has answered. So she was like our answer there. And then on the yellow here, that's Kira. She's 3 now. Kira means grace and grief. She's highly charismatic. Between the 2 of these, I want to buy one. My wife won't let me have one, so I got to do it. So I'm a dad, husband, a father, and an independent contractor. So if anybody wants to pay me to feed these kids, I would love it. I would just love it to come and talk to your group. So in this workshop, we're talking about how to be informed, instructed, and inspired to take the next step in community engagement with your local community. Your community has assets that are there for the taking, and so we want to help you advance the cause of your organization and improve your outcomes among students and the parents you serve. And so when you leave, my hope is that you'll learn how to partner with parents to educate, encourage, and empower students to make healthy choices through school-based presentations as well as special presentations to community organizations and faith-based nonprofit organizations. I want you to be exposed to an overview of project plans for programs used to engage families, schools, communities, and faith-based organizations. Goals, objectives, outlines. I got some sample budgets that I will share if you know me. And then participate in a work group at your table where you're going to talk about developing pilot projects to engage people in your community. How many of y'all have heard of the 40 developmental assets? Okay, so this is a research project done by the Search Institute. And it basically said there are 40 different assets that young people need to be able to be like positive, contributing members of society. There are 20 external assets and there are 20 internal assets. If I had more time and we had more money, I would have had all of y'all have a sheet of these internal or external assets, and I would have you check which ones you think you had access to prior to the age of 18 years old. When I directed lifeguard Secretary of the Education program, we would take our staff through this when they came on staff to say, what did you have, what didn't you have? And then we congratulated them on being where they are, because not all of us had, I don't know anybody had all 40 assets. You know, if you look at, I'm gonna pull them up so you can see them here. Let's see. You got family support, under support, you have empowerment, you have boundaries and expectations. This is categorized here based on the Congress report from 2018. constructive use of time, the internal ones, commitment to learning, positive values, social, some competency. I swear I'm 1 year from bifocal, like 1 year. It's coming next year. But I'm gonna do that. What they call it, Invisalign? No, Invisalign is your teeth. What they call it?
No, it's the line.
Yeah, what do they call it? What they call it? What's it called? Progressive. I thought progressive was when the class go from night to dark. What they call it? Transition. Those are transitions, okay? See, we get all the terminology the other day. Oh, yeah, I'm 1 year from progressive. All right, and then positive identity. So this is what I want you guys to do. Let me see how many takes we got. Hold on. Okay, perfect. All right, so this table right here, I want y'all to look at the. Can y'all see those? No.
I need to.
Okay, I'll ask this out loud. What is an example of one of the support assets that a student might get from their community? Let's say if they family support, positive family communication, other adult relationships, caring neighborhood, caring school climate, parent involvement in schooling. Can somebody give an example of where they've seen that in their community where you're serving currently? You've seen one of those 6 items. Anybody share an example of seeing that or what that might look like in your community?
At our organization at Girls Inc., we serve girls ages 6 to 18, but they come from everywhere. And so sometimes we want to put them in front of, all the time, different mentors. So we do a mentoring event. So that's everybody in the community comes and supports an event so like they feel like they're in their corner. Exactly.
So they have like people in their community that says, we believe in you. We believe you can make healthy choices and do good things. So when we get into the empowerment piece, I love what we talked about this week, co-creating with you. I'm working on a curriculum for students now, and I'm like, dude, I need to just scrap the whole thing, start over with young people. You know what I'm saying? Because I think I know what they need, but I don't really know what they need. I know what I think they need, you know. And so I'm gonna go ahead and launch something now, and I'm gonna let them help me improve it once we get it into school. So when we look at these assets, what I've studied in my degree in transformational leadership is asset-based community development. And oftentimes we think about solving a solution in our communities, we look at all of the problems that are in the community. But asset-based community development says, don't look at the liabilities in the community, look at the assets that are already there. And so asset-based community development, also known as ABC, is an approach to sustainable community-driven development. Beyond the mobilization of a particular community, it is concerned with how to link micro assets to the macro environment. I know it's big words to say, how do you take the small things in your community that can make value in the larger part of your community. Asset-based community development's premise is that communities can drive the development process themselves by identifying and mobilizing existing but often unrecognized assets, thereby responding to challenges and creating local social improvement and economic development. So I went to Kenya and Ethiopia to do vision trips for how we as a church that I was working at were going to impact that community. One of the things we did was we went into these communities and we just shut up and listen. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you need? What can we do to support you in helping your community? There's a huge history of missions colonizing and kind of like having that savior mentality where we go ahead and make the world a better place. The problem is we bring in a bad system to a better world. And so I met the greatest leaders in my life in Africa. People who had very little resources but were able to collaborate and partner with their community in order to make a difference. And so we're going to look at 4 different assets we have in our communities to be able to help students make healthy choices and create what I call wraparound services to support those students. So it really does take a village to raise a child. You guys may have heard that proverb before. And so we want to talk about parents. Equipping parents to communicate with their students is the first step to helping students gain access to healthy choices. A parent that can't talk to their student about sex is going to have a hard time helping their student make healthy choices about sex. My parents never talked to me about sex. All I knew was don't have sex. But I didn't know really what sex was. There's definitions of sex I didn't know were sex until I started teaching sex ed. I was like, oh, that's sex too, huh? That would have been nice to know. You know, oral sex is sex. Outer course is sex. Neutral genital stimulation is sex. sex, you know. I didn't know all this stuff, you know. All I knew is, you know, don't get no girl pregnant. Daddy, a preacher, and a preacher kid, they're supposed to get a girl pregnant. The whole church gonna leave, but they can't take care of our kids. That's a lot of pressure, man. That's a lot of pressure. What you did was you live out here, 11th Amendment, thou shalt not get caught. Just sneak around, you know what I'm saying? I was at prayer ministry, all prayer meeting. Lay hands on people, smoking tongues, that's a joke for y'all. I did lay hands on. Not with a way. Okay. The second option, second piece here is schools. Partnering with schools where students spend the majority of their time is the second step. Students making healthy choices. Students are at school anywhere from 7:30 to 4:30. High school, sometimes if they're in after school sports and that type of thing, they might be there at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And so we have to use the institution of schools to create, or we can, I'd rather say, use the institution of schools in order to be able to provide some of the resources needed to help our students make good choices. The third one here is our community organizations, partnership with community organizations. That's the third step. Organizations that have a shared interest in our students. They want to see our students do well. They want to see our students make a difference. They want to see our students be contributing members of society. And so they have been created outside of the home and outside of the school system to kind of provide another resource. And the final one I'll focus on today is our faith communities, partner with faith communities to help students make healthy choices. I know oftentimes, having been a person who works in the faith community and have served on staff at churches, started a church, was a campus minister for 4 years, where I had to help students navigate the Texas relays. It was like by relay time, we knew, okay, we need to like really help these people like make healthy choices. Y'all know the Texas relays, like all the black people come to Austin. And you know, you see beauty you haven't seen normally in Austin. Now, Austin is not a lot of black people. So when all these black people come to Austin as a black person, when you see beautiful blacks from Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, wherever else it came from, you might be tempted in ways you weren't tempted earlier times in the 502. And so all of that, I think when people think of faith communities, if they're not understanding of how to partner with faith communities, they just cut faith communities out of their work. They assume that a faith community would help a student make a healthy choice if that student is choosing to be sexually active or if that student is actively engaged in sexual relations. The reality is this is not true. Faith communities know what's going on. We're not dumb. So we counsel people, talk to people all the time who are telling us what they're doing, and so we want them to be able to make safer and healthy choices as well. So we'll talk about these four areas as we talk about it taking a village to have this community-based or asset-based community development process. So somebody give an example of ways that you engage parents as you think about trying to improve outcomes with students related to sexual health. You might have an idea or a way that you as a team are engaging parents. Yes?
Our district has teams that are open to parents bring their children up and they need to like push out information whether it be on mental health, substance abuse, and we have food and beverages and childcare.
Beverages?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah. Without childcare, it's really hard to make it happen. You know, because that becomes a barrier, right? To parents who don't have a village to help them with the kids. My wife lived away from our parents, and so you know, once we had kids, it's like our life stopped. Like, dude, how can you go listen to live music at 9:30? I'm not leaving my kids with these people after 9:30. You know, so I want to create something in Austin where live music starts at 6:30. So I get home by 8 o'clock. So my kids in bed, you know what I'm saying? So I'm working with some people on that. Somebody talked to me about partnerships you have with local schools. Specifically, if you either do an in-school program or you do something where you partner with local schools. Anybody have an example of their local school engagement? Middle schools, high schools, elementary schools. Yes? Oh yeah, but Zoom people, they gonna be on mic.
Typically, nurse family partnership does home visits.
Okay.
But the best time and place to catch a student is at school. So nurses go directly to the school, visit with them. They don't miss classes. You know, take care of those barriers.
Right.
And the students still get served.
Do y'all meet with them like during lunch or
During lunch or at elective time.
on elective time? Okay, perfect. So talk to me about some of the community organizations outside of your organization that you all have partnered with to help advance the mission you have as an organization. Yes.
So, in my district, I work with teen parents, and we partner with 2 organizations that focus only on teen parents so that they have the support outside of the school, and they cover topics that we're not necessarily covering, but we tell them what we need them to cover. And so those organizations provide scholarships, tutorials on financial literacy, and so we partner with those community organizations.
Are you able to name those? Or
Yes, one is Lovey's Pearls.
Okay.
In Houston, Texas, and she's actually probably watching, so shout out to you, Lovey's Pearls.
Shout out, Lovey's Pearls.
And then we work with Team in Action.
Okay, cool. Team in Action. Awesome. Awesome. Anybody partner with faith communities at all? Yes.
I'm sitting next to some representatives from our faith-based community that we do partner with. We get to partner with Live the Life Church in San Antonio, where we get to implement our sex ed curriculum. So, good group over here.
Yeah. One of the things, I'm working with a nonprofit on is developing sex ed for married people in churches. But we found a lot of married people in church ain't having good sex. And that's, according to the Bible, sexual immorality. Like, you and your spouse ain't like getting it consistently, that's a sin in the Bible. So my wife there, she was like, prove it. She cool with it. But you know, growing up in the church, it's like sex was this whole thing over there. So like, don't talk about it. Okay, now get married. Now do it. How? What do I do? How do I make this work? How is more than a notion if you don't have experience and you don't have nobody teaching you how to do it. Now, older people typically would teach younger people how to do this stuff, but there's been this disconnect where folks don't want to discuss it. And I'm like, man, we wonder why sometimes people are engaging in inappropriate behavior according to their value system. And because within their value system, they have been given permission to engage in what is you know. So we'll talk more about that when we talk about students today. All right, so when we look at these 40 developmental assets, I was going to have you guys working to the table to talk about which area parents, schools, community orgs, and faith communities could produce an asset, but based on what you guys are telling me, you can't see those. So I'll just say any of these could connect to any of the assets if we think about it. When I look at specifically, let's say with the family support, with family support, you can incorporate family support with parents and schools. You can incorporate family support with community organization. And me and my brother went to the Boys and Girls Club in the summertime. We walked there because it was safe to do that back then. And we would be there all day long with adults who cared about us and wanted to make sure that we stayed, you know, smart, healthy, and strong. And then we would come home. And parents knew we had an active, engaged, educational, physically active, motivational day. And they could trust us to that organization because they had to work. We had partnerships where we were able to be a part of leadership camps and go swimming, you know, go to the movies, and just things that we weren't able to do with our families because our parents had to work. And so all of these could really be worked in with any of the assets or any of the areas we talked about. So let's take a look at parents. Some of the ideas that we had around helping parents to be able to engage their students in making healthy choices include things like developing a monthly newsletter where we encourage or educate parents, whether it be print, in print that you can send home to students, whether it be online, developing a blog. Wix is an amazing web development system that lets you create a blog through their program. Unlike, like, you don't have to do a Constant Contact or MailChimp. It can all be built within that website for people and have that available. Outside at the Health and Human Services Department, they have a website called, let me tell you this, it's like Get Informed Parents, Get something, so I was gonna remember it. I'll run it down. Anyways, right out here to the left.
Oh,
There-
Get Parenting Tips.
Yes, what's it called?
Get Parenting Tips.
GetParentingTips.org, I think it is. .com. Or .com, look at it. Get Parenting Tips. But here's what I found with parents. When I would do parent workshops, which is part of what we did as well with our program, we would do them in person, and then we started offering them virtually, even before the pandemic, because parents had kids of various ages, you know, so it's like, if we do it at 6:30, that's probably the middle of dinner time. If we were in a school, can you be at the school and with your 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old? And so we started doing virtual and in person. But when we would provide it, ours was an overview of our curriculum and also different resources they could access to learn more about sexual health. The biggest misconception we have as parents thought their kids were living in their life. So parents who were sexually active as teens assumed their students were sexually active, and often they weren't. And so they're thinking, my kids are probably trying to have sex. And the kids are like, we're actually waiting because we know what it is for you. Like your experience, you told us what your experience was like. I don't know many 16-year-olds that are good at having sex. And so a lot of times they'll have that sexual experience, they're like, that was sex. That's it. All this stuff y'all been talking about, they haven't been taught how to have sex. They haven't been determined how to have sex. And so we wanted to provide additional resources that we could not provide in a 90-minute parent workshop. So ongoing communication through some sort of newsletter can be helpful. I got certified in building family connections. It's a weekend training you can do to help students to be safe, smart, and strong, providing communication skills, having them understand sexual activity, understand STIs, STDs. Like, people who grew up in the 80s don't know about the other STIs that are now more commonly contracted in the 2020s. Like, when I started telling parents some of the STIs were out there and what some of the, some of the symptoms and stuff were, they're like, really? Really? I didn't know. All they knew was HIV. They didn't know about HPV. They didn't know about the long-term consequences of HPV. They didn't know that there's a vaccine for HPV. They didn't know that you could, contract certain STIs through non-vaginal sex. You know what I'm saying? So there's like ways that you're educating parents and helping them to understand so that they can inform their students. Because if a parent tells their student something, and then an educator tells their student something, and they match up, the students are, okay, somebody's telling me the truth. But if the parents are saying something different than an educator, and I'm talking about facts, I'm not talking about values, because values are gonna always be based on the family and what they believe. But I'm saying when we come down to straight up facts, like what are the facts about this in America, like STIs in America, what are the facts about sexual activity, what are the facts about sexual assault? When they hear that from both sides, it's going to affirm what they believe. Interactive parent webinars, providing, one of the things I found is that having a panel of students speak to parents. Parents at home, they got their car in their ear, they cooking, washing dishes, and they hear the students say, I wish you would have told me that. Like, I'm always like, your dad's the only man I've ever been with. So my whole life, I'm thinking my mom waited until she got married to have sex. But as I got older, she's like, I didn't say that. I said, man's the only man I've been with. And so, I was like, see, you made me, man. I didn't think you think nothing. I told you the truth. She told me the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But she told me a truth. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think age appropriateness was involved in that, but also it was like designed to try to help me make a healthy choice. My dad told me straight up, man, son, when I was in the military, it was what it was. You know, it was this was my life. This is the way things were. And so I was like, but you didn't tell me how you dealt with your challenge, your urges once you got married. How did you stay faithful to mom? How did you not tip out? How did you express your desires and what you needed, what you wanted in a sexual relationship? None of those conversations were happening. So the student could literally tell a parent, this is what I wish you could talk to me about. And the parents could have a safe place to hear that and then go like freak out and then go figure out how they're gonna talk about it. And that would be a helpful resource. And then the final one I'll share here is a faith-based parent academy where we partner with local communities to host trainings for parents based upon their belief system. So when I've taught sex ed, I've always started with the medical, sociological, psychological, physiological, all that before I got to the moral component. Because growing up in church, I knew that the moral reason for being abstinent for me was not enough. For me it was because I follow rules, I follow rules. But for most people, that's not enough to help them make a healthy choice. They need more. And our students today are smart enough to know there's more information out there than a lot of people are telling them. And so if you don't tell them the information they know is true, they don't trust you. If you act like contraceptives aren't available, who's gonna trust you? If you act like they can't be effective, who's gonna trust you? Because they can do their own research. Now, not all their research is good research. The worst thing you can do is just Google something. You'll think you have cancer in your left toe, you know what I'm saying? My toe was itching, I got cancer in my toe. But being able to have something that aligns with the faith of the community and allows that to be a portion of the decision-making process can be helpful. Okay, so I want you guys to, at your table groups, talk about which of these 5 options would you consider as a first step for you and your organization in engaging parents. If you're already using one of these options, you can share about that, and then we'll come back together. I'm going to hear from you. You need to say it again? All right. Let's talk about, if you need a parent engagement program, which of these 5 would be the easiest one for you to start? And if you're already doing one, share it with your group how you're doing that. We'll be right, I'll be back.
And they select topics. They're not encouraging. They have
All right. Thank y'all for sharing. That was my built-in water break. So we have a few minutes left, maybe 20, 25. Then you're gonna let me go a little bit long, but I don't want to go too far. So take about 2 more seconds to finish what you're saying. All right, somebody share real quickly, if you would like to, one of the ways you're engaging parents, or and which of these models is something maybe you haven't thought of or you're thinking of and incorporating. Raise your hand in the air.
Great, I have somebody from the chat.
Okay, yeah, somebody from the chat.
Yes, they say, this is Cheryl Hansen.
Shh, hold on one second, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead, Cheryl.
They send home a discussion sheet for the teens to talk about issues with their trusted adults.
I love that. I think that gives parents a safe place to talk. Okay, so homework, y'all. You gotta do homework. Let's read these questions. And I teach parents about poker faces, you know what I'm saying? You know, learn how to control this right here. Because if you do the facial stuff, they stop talking. You gotta act like you, what do you think about that? That's the question all the time. What do you think about that? How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on that? How would you engage that? You. It ain't about me. It's about you. And that's what we're going to look at as partnerships with local schools. So I've looked at everything from school-based presentations. We did a program that was 3 days in the middle school or high school. Event-based program that include things like a First Friday Fun Night, incorporating students having tourist opportunities in the city where they can do different things and engage one another. A fifth quarter party is like a open mic night after a football game with a DJ, concessions, and the students manage the whole experience. They have to QR code, get voted to be on stage. And then the top 10 groups, top 10 performers, spoken word, singer, artists, whatever, they get to be on stage because they got the most people to vote for them that's built in the audience. And then they come out. Before the moment of the production, like this, like a stage play, video, music, speaking production that helps students think about vignette experiences of what do you do before you get into the moment of thinking about having sex. So we would do that at a school like a pre-spring break or pre-prom or pre-graduation. And people feel pressure to be sexually active, whether or not they want to be. And so it kind of puts this, gives them scenarios to look at, okay, almost like the choose your own adventure. Y'all remember those choose your own adventure books, you know? So it's like, okay, you get to go this route. Okay, if you do this, these are the possible results. If you do this, these are the possible results. The Waiting Game is a weekend conference summit that offers the opportunity for students to understand ways that they can choose to delay sexual activity. Creating student groups where you have ambassadors on campus or peer support groups. And the Wait Prom is like a winning and inspiring team. So students who are choosing to wait, who have a prom together where it is assumed if you're here, you're not going to be sexually active tonight. This creates a safe place for students to consider delaying sexual activity. So some school-based programs, community organization options, partnering with the Boys and Girls Club. I talked about them, you know, Denzel Washington, the Boys and Girls Club advocate. He was in the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, Housing Authority. So taking what you can do into the Housing Authority community where students are already there, their parents are already there, engaging the city recreation programs in the summer because they got time and they need content.